Yo, what up, though? Welcome back to the channel. It's your boy Street Coder Nate, and today I got a fun one for y'all. So today we really is tapping into more of JavaScript, and this JavaScript is pretty much higher order functions, the ones that I feel like I use on a daily or on a normal that really help me out in my use in JavaScript. And so, what are higher order functions? Higher order functions pertain to arrays, and in JavaScript and pretty much any programming, you typically hold a list of values, and in those values or in that list, you want to do things multiple times. You want to iterate over that list. You want to create lists. You want to filter things, and so in doing that, you use pretty much similar syntax for the for loop, for the selection of the element and all of that. And so what we're going to do today is take a look at how programmers noticed this and created an API kind of, if you will, for arrays that allow arrays to um, use these function like iterations that just blow our mind. And so let's tap in right away. And so right here, over here, what you see is um, you currently see a list. You see, I created a list called scores, and the scores, each score or each item in the scores list is a object that has name Nate and then points, or it has name, has key value name, and then its value, and then key points, and then its value for each object. And so we're just gonna use this, we're gonna use that to pretty much go through the examples of these higher order functions. There's about four of them that we're gonna get through. And so we got the first one that we're gonna cover is this is a normal for loop, right? Normal for loop. But the first one we want to cover is for each. And so the basic syntax for all of these higher order functions is that we call on the name of the array. And so if that's the case here, then what we're going to do is call on the name scores. And we call scores dots. And we use this dot operator, and this gives us access to all of the different attributes and methods that the scores array have. And these higher order functions are methods. So we're going to type for each, and you see that it comes up. And so for each is real cool because it takes in an anonymous function looking like this, right? Got your parameter list, you have your arrow, and then you have your curly brackets. And so this is pretty much the syntax for a non func, right? This is the syntax for an anonymous function. So, but for these higher order functions, their input, like right here, their input to my bad, their input, where is that at? Right here. Their input in the array right there. This input is going to be the element each iteration. So what do I mean by that? So here you got your for loop, and inside the for loop we're doing each iteration. Like the for loop goes iteration by iteration and stops when the index is less than, or when the index gets greater than scores.length, which is just the length of the array, right? Cool. But this is what I'm saying. Each iteration, they're going to grab that element right there on line 26. Well, inside of the higher order functions, they're going to iterate for us. And in each iteration, they're going to give us access to the element that we want. And so we can, they pass that, the JavaScript automatically passes that element into the higher order function that's passed into the into the anonymous function that's passed into the higher order function, right? So JavaScript is going to give us access to an element. So let's just title this element. And we can honestly title this whatever we want to title it, right? Because this, what we're doing here is defining a set of procedures, a set of commands. And so when we're defining a set of commands, we give variable names, and then we can use those variables inside of our function, which is right here. So once we open up the curly brackets, we then can start writing our procedures in between those curly brackets. And so for all they did was do a console.log. So let's end up doing the same thing for ours. Let's do a console.log of the element. And so this is the anonymous function. This is the full anonymous function that we're going to take and pass to for each, like that. And so that's what happens. For each takes an anonymous function. Some people see this and be like, yo, what the fuck, that looks scary. But you just saw how I broke it down, that it's just a scores.for each call, and then we're passing in a function. And this function can do multiple things, right? We can keep on going. The function can also just be a one-liner. And if it is a one-liner, then we don't even need the curly brackets, and we can just simply say console dot log, and we can log the element like that. And when we log the element, let's put a separator in between console.log right here. And the separator is probably going to look like a \n, another \n, and then in between the \n's, we'll go like that. And \n just means add a new line, like a new character, or like a space in between. And so let's refresh the page. And what we see below, what you see, actually, I forgot to explain that, on the left-hand side, or on this side right here, what you see is my console. I just have a headless console right now, just and index.html file that's connected to it. And so you can see the JavaScript going back and forth. So this one right here, this is from the for loop over here. This is from the for loop right there, right? And then we have our separator, and then we have our for each. And look at this for each. This for each is literally just one line, but the same thing is printed out. It's one line, but the same thing printed out, right? This is a lot simpler to write. Maybe look a little bit more complicated, but like I said, we can make this look less complicated by just putting curly brackets here and not making a one-liner, and now making a two-liner, and knowing that this is a function call right here, or this is a function definition that's going to be ran for each element inside of the scores array. And that's what for each does. So that was, for each was pretty simple. For each pretty much just went through and just calculated some values, right? So, but I can also manipulate values inside the for each. Like, what if I wanted to do, what if I wanted to update the element to say element plus equal, or element dot points plus equal, let's go 5. So I'm upgrading everybody points to 5. Let's see what happened. So I'm gonna come back over here and refresh the page like that. And so this is the original array where you see everybody's points is just 5, 10, 5, 25, 45. But then down here, I updated the points to be 20, 15, 10, 30, and 50. And then I console.log that point. That's the point of, like, for each. Like, I can manipulate the values in the array in place. And then, like, I can console.log that scores array, and you'll see that the points have been updated right there. Like, the points was updated. Nate points is now 20, and Corey is now 15. But in the original, Nate was 15 and Corey was 10. So this is showing you how we're updating the actual scores array in place. Okay, let's take that one out though. Cool. And now let's move down to do the next one. And so the next one is one of my favorite. It's called map. And I use this a lot up in React, because you're gonna use it a lot too once we get to React. And so the way that we use this is the same way: scores.map, and map takes in an anonymous function too. So we can define our anonymous function right here. This is the last time I'm gonna define it outside of the parameter list, but just so y'all can see, like, literally what's happening, all I'm doing is taking the parentheses. An anonymous function is, all it is the parentheses, the arrow, the curly bracket. And so now we can define this anonymous function. what do we want to do? Well, we know that we're going to get access to each element per iteration. Map does the same thing as for each is going to iterate. So we're going to get access to each element. I'm just going to call it L this time. And inside this element, so what map does is map is going to return us an array. For each didn't return us an array. It pretty much changed. It did the operation on the current array, and then after the operations were done, that was it. It didn't return us anything. Map, on the other hand, map is going to create an array of the same size of the original array. So we're going to create an array. So if we're going to create an array, like if map is going to return to us an array, well, let's store that array. So we're going to go const, I'm going to call it updated scores or something like that. And that's going to equal scores.map. And so now what this does is we can inside of the scores.map, we can manipulate the values of each element inside of the map. And so, but we have to return at the end, we have to return that element. And so we do return, or we can say we will do new, all right, let's go, const new obj. Let's just create a new object just to hold it, and that's going to equal the element. And now what we can say is new obj is going dot score or dot points is plus equal to let's go 7, and then what we'll do is return new obj like that. And now we come here and we just pass this anonymous function to map like these, and bang, type error array.prototype.map callback must be a function. We have a function. Okay, cool. So let's clear this and let's refresh. Cool. All right, so our map works, but we didn't print out anything. So let's go ahead and print it out. And we can do a for each to print out the updated scores dot for each. And all we're going to do is for each element, we want to print out the element. So console.log element RL. All right, and so let's get it. Where we at? Cool. So you write down below, you see what I'm doing here. Right there, you see I have Nate and his points now. Nate's points are now 22, and that's because over here on the right hand side in the new OBJ I created I added 7 to the points, and then I returned a new object, and that return to the new object, whenever I do a return inside of a map, what that return is saying is inside of this new updated scores at the same place where we are in scores, this item that was just returned, store this item in that location, and now move to the next item and do the same set of procedures, and then store that new item in that new location. And then that builds out for us an updated scores array. Let's take scores and do scores dot for each. I already have a scores dot for each. Let's move scores dot for each, this one down here, and let's see what this does. All right, so we actually did end up manipulating the actual values inside of scores, and I knew we were going to do that when I said new object to element. So what we actually would want to do is do like a deep copy of new object or of the element. So I would just say new object equals like that, and then or like that, yep. And then I could go name is going to be equal to L dot name, and then we'll say new object points, or no, we'll say points. It will be equal to L dot points plus equal 7, or plus 7. Okay. Cool. So now now let me go ahead and copy that one. Paste that. Cool. So now what you see is that I created this new object right here. I set the name equal to the element name, L dot name, and the points equal to the L dot points plus 7. And the reason that the other one didn't work is because of this thing called shallow copies and deep copies that I didn't really explain to y'all yet. But everything is objects in JavaScript. And I knew that, and I knew that's why I ended up just doing it again so that y'all can see now that this print statement is of the original scores. This is the original scores right here. And then this one right here is the manipulated scores that we did in the map. We manipulated the scores, the new scores, by adding 7 points to each person's score. And now you can see that it's showing up right there. Cool. And the original values aren't changed. Yeah, they aren't changed from the original. Cool. So that's map. Now we have 2 more to go through. So we got map, and what if we wanted to find an actual value in the array? Well, actually not find. Let's do a filter. So what if we wanted to filter out some of these? What if we wanted to filter out the people who didn't score over 20 points, right? So the way that we can do that is running it the same type of way, like scores dot filter, and this runs the same way as for each and map, but this returns a filtered array and keeps the original array in place, just like map kind of does. But map returned a full array. Filter is going to return a filter array based on the conditions that we tell it to look for, right? So we got const, and we're going to go with filtered scores, and we're going to set that equal to scores.filter. And we know that filter is a higher order function, and higher order functions take in anonymous functions that have their first parameter being the element, and then we call then we do the arrow and the curly brackets, and now we can write our commands. So what we want to do is tell it return, and this return statement is going to be a Boolean. It's going to be a Boolean condition. It's going to be a true or false condition. And so if this condition is true, then what we do is we take the element that it's true for, and we store it in this new filtered score. If it's false, then we don't allow it to be in the filtered scores, right? And so let's say I wanted to just return the elements that had points who were greater than, let's say, 20. Cool. So now I can do a console.log of my filtered scores, and what you will see is that only a couple hoopers hooped. Only a couple people had greater than 20 points. Filtered. Let me go and put filter. Okay, cool. And actually, let me do the for each so it looks a little better for us. Filter scores dot for each, and for each element, all we need to do is just console.log that elements. Cool. And click that, clear that, and refresh that, and bang, what you see down there, you see Nick scored 20 points or 25 points, and you see JJ scored 25 points, right? Nick scored 25 points, JJ scored 25 points, or scored 45 points. This filter method right here, what did it do? This is the condition I gave it. I said filter on points. I want to make sure that element dot points is greater than 20. So for the element that I'm looking at, is this points greater than 20? If its points is greater than 20, add it to this new array called filtered scores. And if it isn't, then just don't do nothing to it. Then just go to the next iteration, right? And so that is what filter does. And then this is what we get returned, is a filtered array, right? Dope. The last one that I really use a lot is find. Find is probably my favorite one because I had to write so many find functions in college. But find is real dope because, once again, you take the higher order, or you call the name of the array, and once you call on a name, and use the dot operator, you get access to its methods in in attributes. So we want to call on a method that's called find, right? And find takes in, once again, a higher order function that takes in the first element, or that takes in an element, arrow, curly bracket. And now, what do I want to do? So find is kind of like filter in that it's going to go through each iteration and check a certain condition, just like filter did right here. But the thing about find is when find finds that condition to be true for the first element, it finds that element and returns that element. It doesn't return a list of elements where those conditions are true, just one element. It finds one. Filter is like finding all of them, right? And so that's what we do with find. But if we cannot find that element, what we get is an undefined element returned, right? So we're going to give it the return, and let's say we wanted to find an element whose name was Nate, right? Or whose name was JJ. Let's just do that. So what we would do is say element.name equal, and let's say JJ. So now if I do first let me do my let me do this and go find. And now what I can do is say score. Oh yeah, I'll just console.log what I found, which should be JJ's found element equals score. And we'll do console.log found element. Cool. And right there below, you see that, can't really see it. Not that one, I don't want that one. Cool. All right. Right here below, you see that name is JJ and points is 45. So what did I do? Over here, all I simply did was, in the find, all I simply did was run this higher order function like I normally do. Inside the find, scores that find, pass in this function and the condition that the element name is equal to JJ. Find me the element where the name is equal to JJ, and that's what that does there. Cool. Like, realize dope. Hey, y'all got through higher order functions today, man. This is JavaScript for real. This is the real life JavaScript, and for real, like, I wanted to give y'all this syntax because I be using this stuff. I use this stuff all the time, like, and y'all gonna really, well, you know how to write JavaScript inside the editor. Yeah, now you know how to write like some real life JavaScript on the continuation of what we did in a previous video, JavaScript in 50 minutes. This is higher order JavaScript. With the JavaScript in 50 minutes, you can still do the same thing. Remember, I showed y'all this for loop right here to begin with, to show you that the for loop is simply doing that these functions are doing exactly what the for loop is doing, except that they're doing them in a more efficient way for the programmer when it comes to typing, right? Okay, so that's pretty much what it is, man. And so you got through it. Congratulations. Once again, drop a like, a subscribe, a comment. Let me know how I'm doing in these videos. This was a really good one. You get this down, you're about to be killing, like, looping through arrays and finding and filtering and all that other shit. So tap in with me in the next video. I'll see y'all then. Peace.